who is the deputy director at TUR and has really been instrumental in diving deep into how do we manage planning around PFAS chemicals. So I'm going to stop my sharing. Sorry about that, Liz, and you can go ahead and share. And yes, thanks, Bill. If others wouldn't mind just sharing in the chat who you are and who you're with so that everybody here knows, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. So can you see the right screen?
Yes.
All right. And we're ready to go. Good morning, everyone. Lynn and Jack and I are going to show you how easy and productive it can be to use your 2024 planning to address PFAS. So as Pam said, I'm Liz Harriman. Later on, we're going to be hearing from Lynn Kane, who's going to go through some forms with you, and Jack Illingworth from OTA, who's going to talk about facility-wide stuff. So the three of us will be just kind of chiming in, and you know, Pam and Heather, whoever, are welcome to chime in here and there if they have something to add as well. We'll pretend we're in a room together. So our objectives are to basically, why would you want to do this? Well, businesses need to find out where they're using PFAS. They now know that they're pretty pervasive, they're everywhere, and so it's important to find out where. So we're encouraging you to use your alternative planning opportunity to find all that out and deal with it. And so we're going to do a little bit of familiarizing yourself with PFAS uses and making sure you understand what that plan would actually look like. So our agenda, the long name on the top, alternative planning, resource conservation plan, et cetera, really what that is, it's just TUR planning for PFAS. There's no mystery. It's just your ordinary TUR planning, and you're going to do it for PFAS. So we'll go through some very briefly what that alternative planning looks like, what the requirements are, and then also talk about some PFAS basics. And then we're going to do the real important part of this alternative planning for PFAS will be about your facility-wide characterization and finding out where you're actually using them. And so we're going to hear about some OTA survey tools, and then we're going to look at a case example, and Lynn is going to walk through some paperwork to show you that it's not a barrier, it's not a problem, and it won't be too much work, and it's another reason why you should do it. We have a couple of activities built in there too, so you get to discuss and practice. So Pam, I think we have a poll for them.
Mm-hmm. We do. So there we go. I just launched the poll. So if you could all just take a moment to let us know where you are with respect to resource conservation planning. Are you certified? Have you attended sessions? Is this the first time you've really been thinking about resource conservation planning? We'll just give it a little bit of time here. So if everybody could go ahead and complete that that poll. All right, I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds. If you haven't already completed it, please do. This is one of the ways we know you're here and paying attention. Okay.
What?
Is everybody from your office going to be doing this conference?
Probably.
Dan,
I just muted you.
Thank you. Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, good. I'm going to end that poll then. Here we go. So, it looks like we have 13 people who are certified RC planners, 18 more who have attended the basic training, 22 have attended workshops over the years, which is great. And we have 3 people who have actually done RC planning for assets 4 and 5.
Yay!
All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. So go ahead, Liz.
Okay. So we're going to just go through this fairly quickly because, as it turns out, you know, the RC planning goes into a lot of detail if you're doing water and energy and some other things, but actually what you're going to be doing is TUR planning for PFAS. So we're just going to give you enough familiarity with it so that you understand how it fits in and what you need to do. So the first question is, when can you do RC alternative planning? You have to have, the facility has to have done a plan and 2 updates. And it doesn't matter if you had a new chemical within that period of time, you're still eligible to do RC planning. So that has come up with someone saying, well, I had to report PFAS NOL for the first time last year. Do I have to do that as my plan? And you don't. You can do all PFAS under this alternative planning. So resource conservation focuses on natural assets. The common ones are energy, water, and a little less so materials contributing to solid waste. But there are also these 2 other categories, 4 and 5. And so 4 is chemicals that you use on the TUR list that are below the threshold. And then 5 is TUR exempt substances. So something that's not listed yet, we know it's toxic, but it's not on the list, or something that's of a concern to you, you can pretty much pick any material there to do a similar kind of TUR plan for. So basically in an RC plan, it's very similar to TUR planning. The addition is that to begin with, you have to kind of select what your natural asset area is going to be. So for the example we're talking to you today, that is PFAS. So that makes it kind of quick. And then the big piece is the facility-wide planning. So that's trying to figure out, again, where that particular asset or PFAS is used throughout your facility. And then you go through the same detailed planning process you would in your TUR planner activities. And you do not need RC certification. So all those people that just clicked that they were not RC certified, you do not need to be in order to do this. You just need to be a TUR planner. So here's a checklist from the training that we do, and it basically looks a lot like your TUR planning. And we're going to point out one thing here. So once you've selected your natural asset as PFAS, then this characterizing the use throughout your facility is really a big part of this plan. And that's really what we're going to focus on a lot today. And how far you get into all of the other activities, you know, you need to be able to at least have done your characterization and selected what you're going to focus on, but you don't actually have to have gone through all the evaluation steps. It's okay if those are still going to be happening after you file your plan summary. So what are these additional assets? 4, again, is things below threshold that are already listed. 5 is chemicals exempt from TUR reporting. But actually, when you go to the guidance, and we're going to encourage you to go to the guidance, in fact, Pam will at some point drop that into the chat, the link to it. So when you go to the guidance, you'll see that we treated assets 4 and 5 for the most part together because they really are a lot like just doing a TUR planning activity. The one that's a little bit different is the products and articles. So that last part of category of asset 5 is done a little different because it focuses more on your supply chain and other activities involved with products or articles that you buy, components that you buy, whatever it might be that you're not actually processing or using in your facility, but are getting incorporated into your work. So that one's treated a little bit differently, and you'll see that if you go to the guidance. So this is sort of a big picture. What are we trying to achieve here with doing PFAS, and in this case PFAS, but any toxics below threshold or chemicals exempt from reporting. So the big picture is we're trying to learn something. We're trying to discover something. So it's an opportunity now to investigate where in your facility PFAS are used, which operations is it used in, where do you have opportunities, where do you have information coming in, or where do you have suppliers and customers that are asking questions or that are challenging you and saying, I don't want PFAS in this product. So that's where you'll do your facility-wide characterization. And then again, you need to kind of prioritize and say which ones are most important to get started on right away. And then you would do your ordinary TUR planning activities for evaluating whatever your options might be and implementing them. things to focus on when you do that prioritization. I've now found I've got PFAS in like a dozen different places in my facility. So as usual, same thing with TUR planning. I'm going to focus on things that are high exposure perhaps, or things that I've just found I'm emitting to my wastewater treatment plant, things that my customers are bugging me about you're getting rid of, things that are higher volume, whatever it is that is important to rise to the top of that list. And if you don't find that you have any PFAS in your manufacturing, which I think is unusual but possible, there are lots of other places in your facility, in your building, in your maintenance, in other places that you could also do this for. So another option in alternative planning is that you can always look at something that you haven't actually manufactured yet. So I have R&D and I'm doing going to incorporate sort of a design for the environment aspect to that and say, all right, I've got a new product and I don't want any PFAS in that product, so I never have to worry about it down the road, and I better design that in now. And so that is also an option under alternative planning. You can focus in on something that you're just designing now. So bottom line, this was very quick, and we'll take, I think we have time for a few questions, hopefully. And just the big bottom line is that what you do under alternative planning for assets 4 and 5, it needs to be comprehensive enough so that you can identify opportunities and you know where you're going to focus, and it gives you good information. And it has to be quantitative enough and detailed enough so that you can actually tell where you're losing the chemical, where it's becoming waste, where you're inefficient, and where you have those opportunities. And you also need to be able to measure progress. When we get to the form later, it's going to ask you the same questions it always asks about TUR planning and what you anticipate reducing and what you have later. You will tell them what you've actually reduced. But mostly we just want you to discover something in this process and make it productive for your facility. So, Pam, do we have time for a question or two if there are any?
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions about using resource conservation planning for PFAS?
And those questions may come later after you actually kind of ground it a little bit in the forms and everything.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Karen.
You mentioned, Liz, that the RC certifier isn't required for this type of plan. So when is it required then? What's the difference of why it's not required here?
So it's required for the energy, the water, and the materials found in solid waste. So those first 3 assets it's required for, but it's not required for the assets 4 and 5, because really it's just about TUR planning for something that you're not required to plan on.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And any detailed questions about that, DEP can help with as well.
Great. Any other questions, folks? No, I think we're good.
And again, if you come up with them, just hold them. We'll have other times we're going to stop and check in. And again, when Lynn kind of shows you the form, I think that may make some of it a little more real for you as well. So that was a kind of a whirlwind tour through alternative planning and resource conservation. And now we're going to do the same kind of thing with PFAS basics. So we have a poll now as well, so we get a sense of kind of where you are in the world of PFAS, right, Pam?
Right. So here we go. Launching a poll, just gauging your familiarity with PFAS. So let's everybody take a minute to find the poll on your screen and complete. You can check any that apply. So the answers are coming in. Looks like maybe 50% of you have participated in trainings or information sessions about PFAS in the past, which is great. many, about a third of you have already determined where PFAS is or might be in your own facility. So I'm going to give it a couple seconds here. If you haven't completed the poll yet, please do so. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So what do you think of that, Liz?
So I think that's great. And we're gonna say that even if you have already determined where PFAS is or might be in your facility, that you can probably look harder and maybe find more uses, maybe not the top ones, but I bet there may be some more hidden ones. So you're still a good idea to do this. And I'm glad that some people have participated in trainings already, because we're going to go through this really quickly. We have a lot of other resources at the end that we will share, that you can go to if you are one of the people who really hasn't kind of figured out what PFAS is all about yet. And I'm enthused that some of you have reached out to your suppliers, and Jack's going to give you some more hints about, you know, let's get busy with that. And yeah, I'm confused about the TUR certain PFAS NOL category. Well, we're not going to cover exactly what's in that category today, but we do have other resources, and we've got plenty of folks at TUR, OTA, and DEP that can help you with that as well.
And we may have time to cover that through Q&A at some point. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and off you go.
Great. And one thing to note is that while you need to know whether something's in that category for your reporting, it's not important necessarily for this planning activity, because we're going to kind of pull them all together and decide what's important. So, what are PFAS? Well, they are fluorinated carbon chemicals. In general, they are carbon chains that have fluorine on them. And at a minimum, PFAS, by most definitions, need to have one perfluorinated carbon, meaning one fully fluorinated carbon. There are many, many different definitions in many different situations. EPA, the TUR certain category, and many other definitions exist out there. But it's certainly, no matter how you define it, it's a really large class of thousands of chemicals. And there are, when you think about TUR reporting, we have the TUR certain PFAS NOL category, which is kind of short chain and up, including polymers. And then EPA has the individually listed PFAS, and those are individually reportable and et cetera. So it's not necessary, again, for this activity to determine which specific PFAS you have. If you know there's a fluorinated chemical in a mixture that you're bringing into your facility and you don't know exactly which one it is, the planning approach will be to try to get rid of it and find something else. So you don't actually need to identify exactly what it is. It's helpful, but you don't need to. So for down below, we just show some chemical structures of various things. The one on the far left is PFAS, which you're probably familiar with, and that's one that's individually reportable by EPA, and one of the more notorious PFAS. And then the PTFE polymer, which is a Teflon polymer, is in the middle. So that's a long chain of carbons, all with fluorine on them. That is part of our certain PFAS NOL category. And then on the right, there's an ether chemical, Gen X, which is something that Chemours or DuPont came up with as a substitute for PFOA when they're making all those PTFE polymers in the middle. And so that is an ether because it has the oxygen, but that is also part of actually, that's now an individually listed chemical by EPA. You may be using HFE as a solvent. So that's that HFE 7100 down there. So that's a fluorinated chemical, and it's an ether because of that oxygen you see in the carbon chain. And that is something that is part of the TUR certain PFAS NOL category. And similarly for the other one next to it, just to show you there's a great variety. You can make lots of different chemicals by putting some carbon, some fluorines, and many other things together. So what are some of the basic uses, the consumer type uses and sources of PFAS that you might find? So many that have to do with oil and water repellency. So things like your furnishing, your fabrics, outdoor clothing, outdoor gear, your child's car seat, anything that says it's stain and water resistant is likely has, in the past at least, had a PFAS coating. So they're also used as lubricants and emulsifiers and things like cosmetics, and certainly in your facility as well. They're great surfactants and film formers. That's why they're used in many applications, including firefighting foam, which you see down in the lower right. And so they're pretty much everywhere. When we go to try to find where they are, we find them everywhere. They also, because they're very non-reactive, they're really useful in many applications because you don't need to worry about them reacting with other chemicals. They're very stable, which is, of course, also part of their problem. So moving on to industrial uses. So what we're encouraging is for you under this planning process to look first at all of the industrial uses and try to tease those out. If you find that you don't have any, and some of you were reporting that you didn't have any, you can still go and look at some of those other consumer uses. Do you buy uniforms for your loading dock people that are coated in PFAS, et cetera? So there's lots of other opportunities within your building, your maintenance, your general facility that you could focus on if you don't have any industrial uses. But there are lots of industrial uses. So polymers and resins. Our category, in fact, does include polymers and resins. So things like fluoropolymers that we use to coat wire and cable or use as a coating on various things. Side chain fluoropolymers, which are then you have a long carbon chain, and the fluorinated carbon chains go off to the side. Those are what you'd find on that loading dock jacket that says it's oil and water repellent. Also, if you deal with other polymers like PVC or polyethylene or non-fluorinated polymers, it's possible that you are using processing aids that are fluorinated. So they have been used for some time now to make it easier to extrude or blow mold other resins. And you may have heard a while ago about an issue with mosquito spray in Massachusetts where they were spraying and found PFAS, and that was because the HDPE container that the pesticide was stored in had been fluorinated in order to make it stronger and less have less air through it, et cetera. So there are many, many containers that end up getting fluorinated, and that can introduce PFAS into your whatever it's containing. And then they're used often as additives and coatings. And unfortunately, as we look forward to clean energy use, they are used many, many places in membranes, like Nafion membrane. That's a fluorinated chemical. So they were also used in metal finishing. For those of you that are metal finishers, you may have found them as fume or mist suppressants in your hexchrome tanks. They're also used as bath additives in many other plating baths. As I mentioned before, the HFEs are common solvents used along with trans-dichloroethylene as a replacement for TCE. And we can help you get rid of that if you want to call. They're also everywhere in, again, for clean energy, they're in refrigerants, they're in blowing agents. There's lots and lots of fluorinated chemicals out there. And of course, they're used as lubricants and coatings in many, many industries, medical devices, et cetera. So that is a very quick overview. We have a minute or two for questions here, Pam.
Yeah, absolutely. Questions about uses?
For those of you that have found uses, just real quickly, where did you find them?
Go ahead and unmute yourselves. We'd love to hear what you found. Daniel mentions mold releases.
Ah, thank you. That's not on our list. Wait till we get to the activity later. We can add
Solvents for cleaning is another one that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I was recently told that all hydraulic fluid has it. Not sure if that's true, but something to review.
I think it is a problem.
hydraulic fluids, okay, resins for
Yeah.
inks, leak testing and high voltage testing, fluids, I assume.
Well, when we do our little activity later, I think there's going to be a lot of additions.
Yeah, I'm worried that I don't have the right groups, but that's okay.
That's great. Any questions at this point about where you might find it? I know that was very quick, but again, we have lots of other resources that we'll share with you. There are some very exhaustive resources that we'll share as well if you really want to dig into some of those. So, all right, in that case, I am going to turn it over now to Jack Illingworth at OTA, who is going to help us figure out. So if I'm going to do facility-wide characterization, how might I go about that? So take it away, Jack. You're
And
muted.
you're on
Jack.
mute, Jack.
Can unmute myself to talk, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks, Liz. She said, my name is Jack Illingworth. I'm a member of OTA's technical assistance team. We provide technical assistance to companies and around the state. Just, you know, as you all know, you don't have to be a member or a TUR filer for our assistance. We're available to anybody around the state. Today, I'm going to be talking about a PFAS survey tool that we developed. It's to help companies in the industrial sectors where they think they might be PFAS uses and help you determine where they are. Next slide. So, you know, as Liz mentioned, we've seen a lot of the common uses already, so we'll kind of skip by that. The next step in the process would be looking at your SDSs and taking a pretty good deep dive into what's listed on the SDS. Keep in mind that things like, you know, fluorinated or perfluoro compounds, most likely PFAS compounds. In addition, companies tend to put things on there like, you know, CBI, confidential business information, or proprietary information. So keep an eye out for those as well. You'll have to reach out to your supplier to get that information from them. We've developed a template for a notification letter. If you wanted to use that, it's on our website. Or you could reach out to OTA and we'll help you with that, find that information as well. Also want to mention that the TUR program is developing a list of products that are confirmed to contain PFAS. And once we get more surveys done and more information in, we're going to make that available to everybody in the program. All right, next slide. So before we take a look at the a demo of the survey, I just want to review some of the goals. You know, currently we've developed some surveys for metal finishes in the paper industry, and we're looking to develop into other sections such as coatings and textiles, and then eventually general manufacturing. As part of the survey, we are going to ask companies to share the names of products that they use that they know contain PFAS to help develop the list I mentioned on the last slide. But again, you know, I want to stress the companies don't have to take the survey. They don't have to, you know, share that information with us, but, you know, we're more than willing to take that information if you want to share it. And again, there'll be no company names associated with anything while we're doing this. We'll be maintaining OTA's confidentiality throughout the survey. But, you know, through the surveys, you know, we think that sources of PFAS aren't always obvious. So companies may not know where to look, and we can help you with that. The survey can also be used as part of your documentation that Liz mentioned for your facility-wide identification. Whatever work you do to get this survey done, you can hang on to that, keep it, and it's documentation that you can be used, you know, for proof of that. And again, like I said, you know, all OTA work is completely confidential. So nowhere in any of this information will company names be shared. Next slide. So now I'm going to kind of go over the procedure that we're going to use for the survey. Rather than sending out a link and just having you do it, we've found that it's more productive if OTA gets involved and kind of walks through it with the company and we'll fill it out as we go. We will send out the questions in advance for the companies to do their deep dive, to look around, to document things, to have everything written down. It's a little upfront work on the company's part, but I think it'll help everything move more slowly as we go through this. And again, you save a copy of this, now you've got something to demonstrate that you did a facility-wide characterization for your PFAS. So let's take a quick look at say again?
Yep, we're ready to launch.
Ready to launch.
All right, so now I'm gonna stop sharing that. How's that?
Looks good. So UMass Lowell has allowed OTA to use their Qualtrics program for the survey. The survey assigns a number to each. The program assigns a number to each survey that we do. So nobody else will know what number is with what company except for OTA. So again, it's just to maintain our confidentiality. This first question at the bottom here is just basically, do you agree to allow us to put the information that you share on that list that I mentioned again on the previous slide? Yes or no, it doesn't really matter. It'll go on to the next slide. So we could just select yes and hit the next slide. Again, just another kind of a statement here that, to remember to share that information with us, while we do the survey, and we'll have a list of all the things. So the first question is basically, again, this is paper focused for the paper industry. So the first question is basically what portion of your facility uses recycled manufacturing. The first three choices will take you to some additional slides just to kind of gather more information. The bottom two, if you don't know, we'll just kind of jump right into chemicals and materials that you may use in your facility. So if we select that one, Liz, and just hit next. So then again here, this is just to gather some information, whether it's, post-consumer, post-industrial, that type of thing. If you select post-industrial, it'll go on to one more question. If you don't, we'll again jump right into the components. So we'll select that. And again, just where do you get it from? Is it from your own facility or is it from an outside supplier? If it is from an outside supplier, there is one more question that'll come up at the end that we'll jump to, but go ahead and hit next. So this slide here is just, we're going to ask you to list your raw materials that you use individually. You might have one, you might have 10. Hopefully you only got a couple that make life easier for you. We'll just list them all through here. Again, if you have more than 10, you can fill them out at the bottom, and we'll figure that out when we get to it. So if we were to just fill something in on the first line there, anything, just the word fluoro or something like that in box 1 there, Liz. Yeah. And this will take us, so each one of these ones will kind of loop through a series of questions for each thing. So you'll see here now it says, what do you use fluoro for? So you just select basically what you use it for. It could be 1, could be 2, could be anything. And then what we ask down the bottom is some supplier information. Company name, contact name. We'll take as much as you have or as little as you have. The more information, the better. This will help us reaching out to companies on your behalf if you'd like, or it's a way to document what suppliers you need to reach out to as well. So you can just fill that out. And if you have the CAS number, that's great. That'd be a lot of help too. And again, if you list 5 or 6 chemicals on the previous question, this will continuously loop through again for each chemical. We're just going to do the one here, save some time, and that sort of thing. So, and then lastly, just, any conversation you have had with suppliers about PFAS in their process that you think might be relative, that would help us help other companies with their issues. Maybe something that's not that obvious, where Flora was in there, but they kind of said, hey, yeah, we got some of this right here. Would help us moving forward, helping other companies and that. And again, more documentation for demonstrating that you've done the full facility-wide characterization. And then we would just submit it. It's pretty quick and dirty. We'll get it done and it won't take a whole lot of time. So would appreciate anybody's interested. We'll be reaching out in a while.
Great. So while Liz gets back to the slides, does anybody have any quick questions for Jack?
I have a quick question, Jack.
Go for it.
So I do want to use that. I've just filled it out and now I want to use that for my own records and my own planning purposes. Do you send that to me or do I get a copy emailed to me?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I skipped that part. Yeah, so before we before we sit down with the company and go through it, we will send them out a blank form for them to fill out, to go through their facility, document everything so that when we sit down, it's easily done. You have it right in front of you, and you can even send us a copy of that and we can use that as well. So
Great.
right, thank
Any
you.
other questions?
I know I went kind of quick, but
That's
feel
okay.
free to reach out to myself or anybody at OTA if you have any questions or would like to even take the survey before we send it out to you. Feel free to give us a call.
And I might add that even if that isn't applicable to your industry, Jack just laid out a great process for you to follow as you go through your own facility and track things and record, the information you're going to need as you go forward. So it's a great process and pattern, even if that isn't your sector and they don't have your sector done yet. So thank you, Jack. That was great.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. So now we're going to kick you off and have you do some breakouts and do some facility-wide use characterization. And we already heard that you have some great suggestions about things that may not be on our list already. I think Pam posted the list on the CE conference website. Is that right, Pam?
Yes, and I just posted it in the chat. And before you go any further, Jill had a question. Jill, do you want to go ahead and ask?
Thank you. To follow up on Liz's point about using this as a method for documenting your facility-wide survey, is that demonstration available as part of the slides that we can access afterwards?
Yes, there's a link in the slide
Okay.
that I didn't mention. It's on the slide with the 4 boxes. It's in the third one down. There's a link to the survey, so you'd have a blank copy of this and there's a couple in there. I think the metal finishing one is in there as well, so that you'd have a couple of options that might apply better to your facility.
Oh, perfect.
Right,
Awesome.
so that's
Okay.
the questions word, right, Jack?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's a
Oh, I see
PDF. It's a PDF of the survey.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is have you break out into more or less into sector groups. And if you're a consultant, then please choose a sector that you work with often. The list of sectors is going to pop up when Pam sends you to breakout rooms. But
Right.
What's that?
Yeah.
So once you get into your breakout room, we're going to ask you to review the list of operations and products potentially using PFAS. And that is the one that Pam just put the link in the chat for. And then you're going to discuss which uses are relevant to your various facilities or ones that you work with, and what additional uses do you know or suspect might be applicable. And then we're going to give you about 10 minutes for this, and then we'd like each breakout group to identify someone who will then come back and put in maybe 3 to 5 uses that you anticipate would be most likely to be present, or perhaps the one that you discovered that you didn't know about and that would be helpful to everyone else to know as well. And what are the highest priority uses for you? So just come back and do a little bit of sharing, and we'll do that in the chat box so that everybody has time to do that, and we'll have a few minutes to discuss and have a bit of Q&A as well. So Pam, what did I miss before you send them out?
I'll walk people through what the groups are, but before I do that, Paul had a question. Are suppliers legally compelled to provide which of their products contain PFAS?
Jack, do you want to take that or you want me to? I think,
I believe they are required to share that with you. They may not be able to tell you I'm not sure how much they can get away with, under the confidential business information, but I believe they do have to share that.
yeah, so I think that is true for all of the EPA chemicals, right? The TRI chemicals
yeah.
that are on our list, right? For the TUR, we call it a mop-up category, the TUR, certain PFAS NOL, not otherwise listed, category. I don't believe that that our law compels them to answer that. Is that right, Lynn or
That's right.
Rebecca?
That's right.
Heather's answering yes too. Yeah. So they are not compelled to do that. But I think at this point, there are a lot of them getting that same question. And so hopefully for a while, it was really hard to get them to even answer you or to, call you back. But I'm hoping that now as they get more and more questions and restrictions pop up in various states and the EU talks about restricting, that they're going to be a little more forthcoming about that. The other thing, when we get to the program update, we'll share a little bit about when they have to tell you if there's a very small amount in it, but we'll save that for later. Teaser.
Great. Okay, so yes, I did post the PDF for the operations where you might find PFAS in your facility. I'm going to open up the breakout rooms in just a minute. I'm going to ask that people in the TUR program not join a room so that we can have a chat beforehand. But when I open up the rooms, everybody has the opportunity to join whichever industry sector you think you'd be most interested in having this conversation about. The handout that I posted does have these instructions on there, so you don't have to worry about that. The breakout sessions that I've created are paper and textile coating, chemical formulations and processing aids, plastics and resins, electronics, metal plating and finishing, solvents and degreasing formulations, refrigerants and coolants, lubricants, sealants, or adhesives, and then just sort of a general other group. So I'm going to open up the rooms. We're going to give you about 10 minutes to have this conversation. Please pick a room and join in, and we're going to make sure that there's at least one person from the TUR program in each discussion room. So here you go. Please pick a room and go ahead and join it, and just have a conversation with your peers. Great, so people are starting to choose, which is awesome. TUR folks, I want to make sure that we have one person in each industry sector group. So
Excuse
we
me,
have-
Pam.
Yes.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
I don't see any option here to choose anything.
I need to 5 uses that you anticipate would most likely be present in that sector. So if you could, whoever decided they would do that or agreed to do that, if you could say paper and textile coating, colon, and then 3 uses, 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, as many as you feel. So that
you didn't really get to that point, just chime in.
say that again, Liz. I'm sorry.
I said if like with our group, you didn't really get to the point of identifying 3 to 5 as a group, just chime in on chat.
Chime in chat or vocal?
So we've got, let's see, electronics came up with pump fluid, heat transfer chemicals, and photochemicals. The refrigerant and coolant group came up with process cooling, comfort cooling, and heat transfer fluids. What else do we have?
And just to remind you that under alternative planning, that comfort cooling is fine to address. You don't need to, it doesn't need to be a process chemical.
All right, so plastics, we have, woo, it's all moving. Polymers, resins for inks, for durability and solvent cleaning. For textiles, convertible topping, water repellent coating. Gee, I wonder who put that in there. For chemicals, we have oils, especially one-offs used by facilities. Wastewater, surfactants, inks, coatings. Paper and textile, here's some more. Equipment parts used to treat substrates. Tote containers for chemicals have PFAS in them. Repellents. We've got firefighting foam, and that I think is industry-wide. Surfactants used in coatings and inks. Dry aerosol lubricants. Meat processing, PFAS in packaging. Aeronautics, hydraulic fluids. Whew, all over the place. That must be the other group. And in fact, it is. Incoming water, right? So yeah, you might actually be bringing, you know, the water supply that you have might actually have PFAS in it. That's an interesting point. Firefighting foams again. Plastics make fibers tough in membranes. Interesting. Other uses that anyone else heard or thought about? Coated rollers and gaskets. Is that in paper and textiles, Jack?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Heather's adding, oh, that's the comment. Heather, do you want to just mention that?
Right before, I don't want to derail the conversation, but right before the break, somebody asked whether a review of the SDSs and sending out the OTA letter was sufficient, and Lynn Kane from DEP responded, yes, that's sufficient. And I just wanted to add to her response, make sure you keep records of the letters that you sent, and best practice is really to follow up if you don't hear back from the supplier on your first try, and to keep a record of that as well.
Because Heather, are there dangers in using PFAS in your facility that you don't know about?
For sure.
Yeah, you're responsible for it, even if you didn't know. Interesting when someone mentioned meat processing and PFAS and packaging. So again, if you feel like you've done a lot in your facility, but you've got a lunchroom or a kitchen or something, there are always other places to look besides your manufacturing. In our group, R&D came up a couple of times. So if in your lab they're using it, or your R&D folks are doing one-offs, as somebody mentioned, you know, those are still things that you can go and address.
Great discussion. I know it was short, but I think, you know, I popped into one and there was, you know, a lot of discussion going on. So any comments, any questions from anyone before we move on? Okay. Oh, good. Thank you, Stephen.
So can you see that again now?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. And again, it's in so many places. So what we're going to do is give you a short case example, and then we're going to have Lynn go through that case example and show you how you would fill out the DEP planning forms, and just show you how easy that's going to be. So, and this is sort of another example of how you might look at your facility-wide characterization. So our example is a wire and cable manufacturer, and that my facility does some wire drawing. It extrudes insulation and jacketing onto the wire, and we do some bundling of Cat 6 fiber optic cable. We've been filing under TUR for quite a while. We currently file for antimony, but so we're ready. We are eligible to do alternative planning. And we've been getting questions from our customers about PFAS in our products. And so we really want to focus in on this. We did look last year to see if we had to file, and from what we added up, it looked like we were just under the 25,000 pound reporting threshold. So we did not file last year, so we don't have a chemical that sort of needs planning, but we're going to go through this process anyway. So our facility-wide characterization, we found PFAS in the PTFE, the Teflon, insulation and jacketing, and we have a couple of different resins there. We use a lot of PVDF, another fluorinated resin. We also use fluorinated polymer processing aids, which you'll see are abbreviated PPA in here. So we have non-fluorinated resins, but we get them already compounded with these processing aids so that they more smoothly extrude. They don't gum up. They don't, cause problems in our manufacturing process. They work like a charm. And then we also have some PFBEs, perfluoride polyethers, that we use as lubricants in the wire drawing and our equipment maintenance. Others mentioned equipment maintenance. Also, the Cat6 cable has some splines in it that are PTFE, and that's a picture of one because everyone kept asking me here, what's a spline? So it's that thing in the middle that separates the other, in this case, the stranded pairs. But we don't actually use those. We don't make them ourselves. We just buy them and they just get cut to length at the end of a run. And so we don't actually process those. They're articles. Inkjet printing inks, we're pretty sure that they have PFAS, but it's not on the SDS and we can't get an answer from the supplier. So we're still kind of up in the air on that one. If you were in the last CE conference session, you will have heard one of our TUR planners talk about their facility that makes inks, and they do in fact have PFAS in some of them. So get a local supplier and then you'll be able to get your answers. We also have some R&D going on. We've got a new wind energy customer and we're developing some new products there, and we would like to try to avoid PFAS. So that's our facility. And by the way, this whole little example, a case example, is also up on the website with the other conference materials. So you can refer to it. And I think that'll be helpful as we go through Lynn's filling out the forms, to have that by your side if you can. So again, I decided I would make a table out of this information I found, and I'm trying to make sure I know what the chemical it is, how it's used, whether it's a TUR certain PFAS NOL, or whether it's otherwise listed on TUR like an EPA listed chemical, how much we used last year, and because this is 2024 now. And also what that use is, and is it like a reportable use or not? Because I want to check my math from last year when I decided I didn't have to report, because now I'm doing a much more thorough examination of everywhere PFAS might be. And then I'm going to think really briefly about what opportunities there are and try to prioritize so that I know what I'm going to focus on in my plan. So I did that here. The PTFE is under the TUR certain PFAS NOL, and it is in a reportable use or process because we extrude it, but that's going to be a longer term problem for us. The PVDF is not part of anything that's reportable, but we use a lot of it. There's another long-term evaluation. The polymer processing aids, we would love to get fluorine and fluorinated chemicals out of our non-fluorinated polymers. And so we're getting questions from customers. So we'd like to get those out. So that's a priority for us. They don't have to be reported under to DEP or to anyone, because we get them in a compounded resin and they're in there at less than 1%. They're in there at about 300 ppm. So I don't need to count that toward my annual use, but I know they're there. Wire drawing, we use some there. And then the splines are an article. I could have focused on those, but they weren't a priority. We're going to keep researching the printing inks, and then R&D is really important. We don't want to develop these new products with more PFAS in them. So we're going to focus in on that and get our R&D folks on board to look at alternative materials. So there is our case example. Any really quick questions? If not, again, if you have the screen that you can keep that up on, you can download it from the website, and it'll be helpful for you to look at that, perhaps as Lynn walks through the plans. So we're ready to go. Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Kane from Mass DP. I'm going to be discussing how to fill out the RC plan summary form. This is basically your ordinary TUR process. It's due by, the form will be due by July 1st of this reporting year coming up, 2024. Please refer to the plan summary form, which is in Appendix A of the Resource Conservation Planning Guidance. Pam posted the link to the RC planning guidance in the chat earlier. The RC plan summary is similar to the TUR plan summary. They are both due to Mass DP by July 1st of next planning year 2024, and they both include use and expected change and goals for reduction. There's also specific guidance within the Resource Conservation Plan Summary form indicated in shaded sections in the RC planning guidance.
I jumped. So we're going to go through this. I am the facility and I'm filling it out, and Lynn's going to kind of set the stage for this is the next part of the form, and then I'll tell her what I'm going to put in there.
Okay, Liz, so the first section is A, targeted asset. In this case, we're choosing chemical substances exempt from TUR reporting, which is from a pull down screen there in the guidance.
Right, and I picked those because my chemical is this copolymer mix, HFP, VDF, TFE, and that's something that I want to focus on, but it's not actually, it is exempt from reporting because it is below the de minimis. So, and my R&D is all exempt from reporting. So I'm picking that particular category.
The next section is B, selected operations. Choose the operation codes and descriptions that are relevant. There is a list of operation codes to choose from in the guidance. Don't sweat the details if your situation doesn't seem to fit the form well. Just explain in the other section as we have described here.
Right. So production is like one line here because there's lots of stuff about energy and water. So I picked production and research and development. And then I also picked other just so I could explain what I was focusing on. So and give a little more detail like I might have done in a TUR plan.
Section C is baseline amount of asset used. This section includes the total amount of the asset used during the baseline calendar year.
Right, and so my use in 2023 from that table I did, what was very helpful, I know is 6,000 pounds. And when I use the pull down list, a chemical automatically says I have to use pounds.
Section D, options selected to implement. List and describe the resource conservation options chosen to be implemented.
Right, and so I've decided again to focus on looking for non-fluorinated processing aids for my non-fluorinated resins. And I'm also designing this new energy, wind energy product line, and I'm gonna make every effort to do that without PFAS. So this is my opportunity to describe at what point I've gotten to. So I haven't gotten to the end of choosing an alternative, but this is what I am going to focus on doing.
Section E, other options considered. List and describe any resource conservation options considered to be implemented. Providing more info is helpful for when you revisit your planning efforts 2 years from now, when you do your resource conservation progress report.
Right. So I don't have anything to say here because we haven't really gotten that far. If I had one specific processing aid that was successful and 3 that weren't, I could have included that here, but mostly I'm just committing to using non-fluorinated ones, so I don't have anything to add here.
Section F, goals for reducing the asset. Section F is the list of the resource conservation goals for reducing the asset use. The goals for reduction should be indicated as a percentage and/or a specific amount of expected reduction by a future year. These goals may be the same as the expected change listed in section G, or they may be different. Your facility may set a 5 or 10-year goal for reducing use of the asset that goes beyond the 2-year planning period.
Yeah, and so now we're going to go to that form, but I didn't take this training before I did my plan. And so I didn't think about the fact that I could set a 5 or 10-year goal. I think that would have been really useful, and maybe next time around I would do that. But now we'll show the form and I'll say what I did.
So section F, goals for reducing the asset.
Yeah, so I set my 2-year goal for 2025 is to reduce 75% of the processing aid material that I bring in on all those non-fluorinated polymers. And again, if I had listened to this before, I think I might have wanted to set some longer term goals here, but I did not. So I'm just focusing on these processing aids and giving a concrete goal of 2 years and 75%.
You will report, can you go back to that slide again? Sorry, Liz. You will report actual changes in the amount of the asset used on a resource conservation progress report that you must submit with the next toxics use reduction plan summary. However, if there are actual changes to report due to an option already implemented, you may include them in section H below. So.
Section H below? Or in G?
Yeah.
Right, so here I fill in my expected use, and again, I'm going for 75% reduction, and so that would be 4,500 pounds.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yep. You just mentioned H
section
below.
Yeah, section H, prior efforts, optional. If you have already done some PFAS reduction or elimination, you could describe it here.
I haven't done anything else yet, so I don't have anything to describe. But that would be really helpful for all of us to know if you have. And clearly by the poll, a lot of you have done some things already.
The last section of the plan summary form is section I, additional information. You may include any additional information about your facility's resource conservation plan that you would like to report to Mass DEP. This is an opportunity to explain what you did in your facility-wide characterization, which will likely be a significant part of your planning process, but isn't a part of the plan summary form. DEP encourages you to provide this additional information.
Yeah, so again, I'm trying to make sure DEP knows that I made a really good faith effort on this alternative planning process. And I didn't get very far in identifying specific options for my processing aids, and we're still in the midway through our design, so I didn't have much to say there, but I did a lot of work at trying to figure out everywhere in my facility I had PFAS. So this is a box where I can use to explain all those other things I did and show DEP that I was making a good faith effort, and I did a lot as part of my plan, even though I might not have a lot of implementation all ready to go.
Remember that you need to submit a resource conservation progress report form 2 years after you submit an RC plan summary form, in addition to reverting back to a TUR plan summary.
So it's now 2 years later.
Mm-hmm. Section A of the RC progress report form, targeted asset. This is the asset that you selected in your RC plan.
Right, so I had selected the chemical substances exempt from TUR reporting, my processing aid, again, providing a little extra information there.
Section B of the progress report form, identification information.
right? So I did my plan in 2023, or my, I have the right dates here? Anyway,
Yes,
and my progress report, is gonna be in 2025.
Yeah.
My progress, the progress I'm showing will be 2025, and I'll report that in 2026, right?
yes, that's right. Great, okay. And then section C, the Resource Conservation Progress Report is baseline information.
Right, so I just pulled this from my plan summary before, which was 6,000 pounds in 2023.
And resource conservation progress reduction goal.
Right, and I had just set a very concrete goal of what I could do in 2 years. And not only that, but we exceeded that. So our actual annual reduction is a little bit better than 75%. So I've included how much we're reduced here. And also made a quick description of what that was. It was the reduction in the use of that processing aid from I'm just noting that was part of the PFAS NOL category.
The form will allow you to enter more than one goal from section F of the Resource Conservation Plan Summary Form.
Okay. I only had one.
Right. List the options implementation status. Section D, list the options selected to implement from section D of your Resource Conservation Plan Summary and provide implementation status for each option. In addition, if any option listed in section D of the Resource Conservation Plan Summary Form was not implemented, state the reason it was not implemented.
Yeah, so this is a chance for me to explain a little more because I hadn't done all that much in terms of getting an implementation plan in my original plan because I spent so much time doing my facility-wide characterization. But now I have actually achieved some stuff and I've implemented some things. And so this is a chance for me to describe what I did. So I identified, tested, and implemented the non-fluorinated processing aids. And I'm still working on a couple of fine wire applications that have really stringent specs that I haven't gotten achieved yet, but I'm working on them. And then we have gotten to a certain point in our DFE work on our new wind energy project, but we're still doing some testing to make sure that they meet all our performance specs. So again, this is a chance for me to explain to DEP what I have accomplished. All right. So, okay, got a couple minutes for questions, Pam?
Yeah, thanks. So just one question. Since companies will be below the reporting threshold, no Form S is needed. Does that somehow impact the ability to use EDEP for this plan summary? Walter, maybe that's a question for you.
Or I could answer it too. Yeah, so if it won't generate automatically unless they choose to do an RC plan. So if they choose to do an RC plan summary form for any asset, it will automatically generate. But if in this case, in the case that Jeff I think was referring to was if a chemical is below threshold, it would be that asset. Does that answer your question, Jeff, or not? Yes, okay, all right.
Okay, good. And then Jill asked, how many RC plans does Mass DEP receive each cycle on average?
How many plans or RC?
Yeah, RC plans.
RC plans.
We haven't been receiving a lot. It's been quite minimal because we haven't, I don't know, I feel like we haven't really been promoting it too much. And that's one of the reasons we're doing it this year. It's been less and less. I think the last planning cycle was only about 6 facilities. So we're hoping to promote it more now.
And we're hoping to promote it because there's value, right? So it gives you an opportunity to apply your toxic use reduction planning skills to something else. And and, you know, remember that this was all created to give facilities an opportunity to do something new when they find that they haven't been finding a lot of TUR options. So, you know, we really do want to encourage folks to consider doing the RC planning. And in this case, you know, looking at chemicals that are below threshold is a wonderful way to apply your toxic cease reduction planning skills.
And I want to remind people too, Pam, that as we said earlier, that people do not have to be certified to do RC plans in order to do RC plans for these two assets, which makes it much easier. And I think Bill Judd had a question too. I don't recall what it was. Let me look and see. Is the progress report only due after the first year? Yes. So again, to repeat what the cycle is, if you choose to do an RC plan summary form for one of these two assets, this coming year, you would have to do an RC progress report in the next planning cycle in planning year 2026 for reporting year 2025. And in addition to doing the RC progress report, you would also have to do a TUR plan summary as well. Then after that, you can do another, in the next planning year, you can do a new RC plan summary if you choose to.
Great, thanks. And yeah, Jill asked about resource conservation, certification, training, and yes, the plan is to do that likely this winter. I haven't scheduled it yet. Once this conference is done, that'll be the next thing on my docket. So keep your eyes peeled on both our calendar, and certainly we'll be sending emails once we have the registration ready. So good, thanks.
Yeah. So one other way to encourage you to do this is to make sure you know you don't have to go it alone. The TUR program is here to help you. OTA just described both some resources they've got and, you know, just call them. They're willing to help you. If you're trying to get rid of your, you know, fluorinated solvents, call TUR. There's all sorts of options for you to do. If you're just confused, call somebody in the program. So we're going to just share a few resources here that we want to remind you about. There is planning guidance, RC planning guidance. Everything you just saw is in the RC planning guidance. Well, not the stuff I filled out, but the other stuff is all there, the blank forms. And then there's also TUR planning guidance, because really what you're doing is TUR planning for something you don't have to do TUR planning for. And then all of that will help you clarify a little bit about what's expected. Also, for the information about what someone in the beginning had said, I'm not quite sure what is in the, the TUR category and what is not. Well, the appendices in the TUR reporting instructions, which are linked here, everything is hot linked here, then they have the lists of chemicals that are at least that we know about, that are likely to be in commerce and are part of the category. But again, any questions you have, call somebody in the program. We're happy to help you out. There's some other basic information resources. Whoop, did that just shift back on me? So it's Kluge et al. Paper 2020 is a masterpiece of compiling everything they could find about uses of PFAS. And the article itself is great. And then also there are supplementary files that list many, many, many specific uses. So feel free to use that. It's a bit of a, you know, deep dive, but another deep dive is the OECD PFAS portal, although they also have some good, really great publications on like coatings and food packaging and side chain polymers. In addition to having a pretty comprehensive list of chemicals that are PFAS in their definition. If you're in metal finishing, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has a great metal finishing industry report. Again, all these things are linked here. And if you want to do another deep dive in where might PFAS be used, the European Union, some countries just submitted a restrictions proposal this last year, which they are now considering. And that proposal itself in Table 8 And also the Annex A provide a lot of background on where they expect that PFAS are being used. Also a great report from Green Science Policy Institute about building materials, and I'm sure that you will find others beyond these, but these are a few that might be helpful. There's a link here to OTA's paper industry survey, and also the supplier notification letter, and we're going to talk more about that in the next piece of this session when we do the program update. And Terry has a PFAS resources webpage, which provides a lot of links to prior presentations. So if some of this was new to you, then go there and you can find some of the additional earlier presentations, which go into a lot more detail about what a PFAS is and what our category is and what's included and what isn't. So, hey, Pam, it's 10:30 on the nose.
Really, really well done. Thank you. I just want to point out, I noticed that the Green Science Policy paper on PFAS and building materials is not yet posted, but we'll get that up there. So thank you everybody for joining. I hope we're going to see many, if not all of you, in just half an hour for the TUR program update. So I'm going to stop recording and